Hey, hey! Welcome to the Board Game Design Variety Hour with your host, Matthew Dunstan. Hey everyone, how are you going on this fine Monday evening or afternoon or wherever you may be in the world? I guess if you're in Australia and for some reason are up at about 3 a.m. or something like that, it's Tuesday already. And we've got some early people. Hey, Michael. Hey, Jay. How are you going? Josh, sorry. Welcome. Thanks very much for joining. How's everyone's weekend been? I guess it's getting colder up here, so sort of a bit harder to. We tried to go for a walk on Sunday, even though it was sunny, but then it turned around, maybe 20 or 30 minutes in because it was just getting already a bit chilly. Hey, Bram, how are you going? Welcome. Thanks very much for dropping by. So it's getting colder, which is always the fun part of year. But I guess more time for board gaming, maybe. We were playing a lot of Great Western Trail. Yes, that's it. That's the name. By Alexander Pfister over the weekend. We played like 2 or 3 games. And yeah, it was really nice to kind of rediscover it. I'd only played it a few times before and sort of hadn't thought much. It's one of these strange games where my impression of it really has got better and better as I go on, which is not usually how things go with games. Usually it tends to taper off or something like that. But oh, it's good that you got some solid play testing then, Josh. What's the game? What's the game that you're working on? Michael, Matt honestly looks like he's been kidnapped and is just streaming designing under duress. What is it that makes me look like I've been kidnapped? Is it because it sort of looks like a blank sort of room that I'm sitting in or something like that? I very carefully, so the desk behind me is my normal work desk where I normally have my computer and my screen set up. But I artfully move everything to this other table for streaming and then clear everything behind me so that there's not a lot of mess. So that might be why it looks a little bit bare. I have a great shelf of board games, Kallax shelves full in front of me, but there's nowhere to put a desk and put cameras, etc. So yeah, this is doing the best of what I've got. It's like I'm hidden away in a barn. Yeah, I mean these it's really so this is like a loft apartment and I'm on a mezzanine, so like the rest of the apartment is down through here actually. So I can look over the main living space and kitchen and everything, and it has these beautiful wooden beams all through the apartment, which is really nice. But yes, it does look a little bit like a barn. Bram, could you hold up today's newspaper so we know we're okay? Yeah, well, who has newspapers these days? I mean, that's not really a thing. I did walk past this. I think it was probably the Spanish embassy yesterday. So we live in a district in Prague where there are a lot of embassies, and there was some newspapers just outside, and I was like, oh, free newspaper. But I was like, probably not a good idea to steal from in front of an embassy that's probably under video surveillance. And the Israeli embassy is right next door, which has like 2 armed guards at all times. So I thought better of it. But yeah. Hey Alex, how you going? Afternoon. Welcome. So it's been a sort of a fun weekend. A bit of gaming, a bit of designing, and actually, for the first time ever, I am going to share some active designs on the stream. So I'm working on a new narrative co-design with Dave Neal of Sherlock Holmes consulting detective, the Baker Street Irregulars fame, and also he's done one unlocked scenario with the Sherlock one that's already been released, and I know he will have another one released soon. So we're working on a new game together, and he's okay with me kind of sharing some of the process. It is interesting because it's the first time. It's a completely different thing that I've ever had to do, actually, because it's a combined digital analog kind of game, and I'm actually even doing some coding. And I'm actually applying the coding that I learnt from my scientific career into gaming, very poorly and very badly, but it's been quite a bit of fun actually, which is good. Josh, playtest Wildfire, a co-op game where you fight a wildfire. It's a bit in the bigger end of games. Okay, sounds really interesting. How does it compare to something like? Well, I guess Wildfire is quite different to something like what was the other firefight? Like there's if anyone can remember the name of the it's from like, it's not Indie Borden's Cards, it's a different Flashpoint. Yeah, there we go. It's just so I guess it's different from that because you're dealing with on a much bigger scale. Yeah. Well, having been in Australia this December and January, yeah, it was definitely very present. It's one of those. It's a testament to what a crazy year it's been to think that, like, we've completely forgot. You know, me and my family have completely forgotten that in sort of our collective consciousness. Considering we were back in December and January, and it was just, yeah, that was a time where it was like smoke everywhere, and you know, it was kind of had global attention, and it's hard to believe that happened this year as well. So yeah, it's a bit crazy, but yeah, Josh said it's closer to a tactical war game ish, but oh, okay, interesting. No, it sounds quite cool. And I guess you're doing it, so you're solo playtesting, but are you also like doing some virtual playtesting or something like that? Alex, yeah, well, I mean, it was, it was kind of otherworldly. You know, you would see this haze and how actually the news was dominated every night, whether like this town was completely destroyed, this town. It was like a lot of tragedy. It was really horrible, and it was just so like all encompassing. But yeah, and then of course that was a small prelude to the rest of 2020, I guess. But anyway, enough with that. Yeah, so as always, feel free to like ask anything you want in the chat. We're all friends here. I'm glad. Thanks for yeah. It's nice to see the regulars coming by. Josh said he's doing some virtual playtesting soon. Just got Tabletop Simulator. Yeah, it does use up a lot of like processing power. I also run it on my MacBook, and it really, like, I don't think I could be doing anything else almost, which is sort of funny because the program itself is not particularly new. I can't imagine it's using so much, video memory or something like that. But yeah, it makes it always sound like the aeroplane's about to take off in my laptop. So good luck with that. Yeah, if you need any tips, I mean, I can maybe, if it's interesting to people, I can also go through on a stream. I mean, I know Michael Fox, who is in the chat maybe. Did you do a stream where you showed making a Tabletop Simulator prototype, Michael? Yeah, because if Michael hasn't already done it and there's interest, I'd be happy to show the workflow, or even just a part of the workflow. The thing I had to really get used to was using the card template to import like a deck of cards, custom cards into Tabletop Simulator. Once I worked that out, then it became a lot easier, definitely. But it depends on the kind of games you're working on. Yeah, so the rough plan for the stream today is chatting about a few things that I've kind of seen. I realized that I try to read a lot about games and follow people, and I thought I'd share like one or two things that kind of inspired me or that were interesting, just sort of like a news or things to check out. Matthew recommends. And then we'll get into the main thing, which is talking about this new design and how you can do some coding in this sort of weird narrative world. Which is kind of fun. I'm kind of excited to show that off. But yeah, as always, questions in the chat anytime you want, or say whatever you like. But I mean, the first thing up, Alex is saying, I tend to make all my game graphics in Tabletop Simulator format these days, as that's where I'm iterating. And when you mean in Tabletop Simulator format, what do you mean? Because I mean, as I understand it, I just produce JPEGs essentially, which I can then, I put on Imgur or whatever, and then it hosts, and I put the link into Tabletop Simulator. Is there some other format that I'm not aware of? No, it's true. It's a new set of skills that we all have to learn and sort of take on, I guess. Yeah. So in the news, I need like some sort of BBC-esque sort of thing going on. Well, I mean, it's not really news, I guess, but it's maybe I'll need some other Matthew recommends or something like that. Alex, if nice cards, I put them in one. Oh yeah, you put them in one. Well, yeah, but actually, this what I was talking about. There's a JavaScript I have, which I got somewhere off the internet, which again can take individual JPEG card files and stitch them all together into that one large JPEG image that you upload to make a single deck. Yeah, so I guess we're using similar things. But yeah, once I knew that workflow, it made everything a lot easier. Sounds handy. Okay, well I can very quickly show it now. Where I can So, well, first up then, Tabletop Simulator. And so I will find how to open it. I won't actually open Tabletop Simulator, but I will open the program that runs it, which I actually have in a... so I have to admit, I don't know where I found this, but I can, hold on, so I should be able to now share my screen. So it's called the Tabletop Simulator Deck Builder, and this is like version, 2.3.0. It has some problems, but basically when you open up this JavaScript file, on Mac, by the way, I assume it works on PC because Macs always seem to be more annoying, but I'll take away this news thing because it doesn't make sense. So you open it up and it says, I want to do a new deck. And then basically you can just drag any image files there. I guess you can probably add cards today. So if I quickly find something, a recent design, that it wouldn't be a problem for me to do something. Well, okay, this is fine. So if I've saved all my cards as individual JPEGs, I think it's best if they're all the same size, obviously. But this is an output from Adobe InDesign, but I suspect whatever image program you're working with, you should be able to do the same thing. And then you just select all the cards you want to do. There's a maximum of 70, I think. The Tabletop Simulator card sheet is like 10 columns by 7 rows. Like that's the maximum. You can have less than that. And I only have 34 cards here. I sort of just drag and drop into the deck builder. Takes a little while, and then I don't know if it's easy to see. I can probably unzoom, and it's essentially auto-populated this kind of sheet. And it does it like left to right, top to bottom. And then, you can just export this, export deck, just leave the settings. I've always left them as they are. Let's just call it something. As a JPEG, save, takes a little bit of time. Syncs, I get the dreaded spinning ball of death. And worked on stream, perfect. So then if I went back and I find the test here, so that's the output essentially. And the black is obviously you can see that it's 10 columns by 7 rows, so 34 is about half. And then this is the JPEG that you can then, would be what you would upload. So what I do is I use like Imgur. I don't know how you pronounce it, but I just upload this particular one JPEG file onto Imgur, and then in Tabletop Simulator, it's like custom deck. I get the image link of this from Imgur. I have another standard card back, which is like the size of a single card, which you can upload as the image, like just for a common card back. I think you can probably have individualized cards backs as well if you want. Although I've never done that myself. And then it just makes the deck in Tabletop Simulator. And it's been a lot once I worked this out and once I found this deck builder. It became a lot easier essentially, because the way I made cards before is I would stitch. I would still be in data merging cards and making like 3x3 grids that I just print off. But you can easily also export individual cards. So that worked out pretty well. Yes. It's a third meeting for deck builder. Yeah. Okay, so I guess if you make a big JPEG to begin with, it could work too. Yeah, I mean, do you mean you're already making something like this, which is like a lot of cards already in one image? Because if you're already doing that, then you're already making the thing that, like the single image that that you upload to Tabletop Simulator. But like this, it depends how you make cards, because often, if you're making lots of individual cards, this is the way to easily stitch together. I used to be trying to do it, you can do it manually in some sort of image processing kind of software, but this just does it kind of automatically and quickly. And I don't do data merge as it is now, just 3x3 sheets. Okay, Yeah. So like this is an easy way to do a lot more cards quickly. Usually prepare them in 3x3 grids. Yeah, exactly. So this is an easy way if you need to do it on Tabletop Simulator. Because it just expects that you're like, you can also download these templates which have the card positions, and again it's just a particular dimension, 10x7. But yeah, this works really well. So yeah, that's the Tabletop Simulator Deck Builder version 2.3.0. So I guess if you just check that out online, I didn't have to look too far to find it. Hey Nicholas, how you going? Welcome. We're just chatting about this Tabletop Simulator Deck Builder. It's a way to like automatically take individual card files, make the kind of like big card sheet that you can upload as a single image onto Tabletop Simulator. It's a really quick way to make custom decks of cards. Yeah, so that was a quick excursion into some prototyping. But yeah, I can definitely go over more, if people are interested to look at, the overall, prototyping virtually process. I'm happy to do that one time. So if you have specific questions, I'm mainly working in Tabletop Simulator now. I do know a bit of Tabletopia, but I think I've got a lot more used to Tabletop Simulator, and I'm by no means an expert either. Mostly I've stolen things from designers I've worked with who know more than me. Yeah. What are we all drinking? I've got my Earl Grey tea. I was happy to hear that I was on Ruel's stream, not on like watching on Friday, and he also enjoys Earl Grey tea, unless I'm much mistaken. So it's a good club to be in. But so yeah, I was gonna news is links that I've liked that might be interesting for designers or things like that. The first is there's a new game designer award called the Zenobia Award that was announced, I think, properly today. I think I'd heard about it somewhere else, maybe a little bit before. But essentially, it's trying to encourage historical game submissions from people from marginalized groups, so women, people of color, LGBTQ plus people, things like this. And it's really great to see. It's interesting because it's actually also kind of a different community that I know personally. This is more in the kind of historical and war gaming kind of sphere. But they have a really interesting mixture of people on their kind of board, from sort of like quite academic people in sort of wargaming that I don't know, or in political science. Jessica is run like different Kickstarter campaign, so more on the kind of game design, like tabletop game design, hobby game design. Looking at historical. This is a really cool. If people haven't seen this, Lovelace and Babbage, which is looking at like the early calculators, and something that I was really, really interested to try out. It was on Kickstarter. Jeff Engelstein, obviously like Ludology fame and other things, and some like people who worked in Major League Baseball for ESPN and strategic development of public transport. I don't know a lot of these people, but even just reading through their different bios, it was this amazing group of people, I think, who were sort of behind this. And yeah, so I guess I mean the main point was just I wanted to give it a bit of a shout out, and if anyone knows any designers who would be a good fit for this, please encourage them to apply. It's zenobiaaward.org. I think the applications are, it's done online, and I'm not sure what the schedule is. Yeah, so it looks like you have to apply by early 2021. But yeah, it's really encouraging to see. I think more awards and incentives to try and encourage a more diverse group of people design games, and and also in historical games, which is an interesting kind of topic that's becoming more and more prevalent. I think people like Cole Worley bringing wargaming and historical games into more of the sort of mainstream hobby sphere. is quite interesting. So yeah, so check that out if that's interesting you, or if you know anybody who would be interested in it. The other one that I was actually looking at, probably may or may not have seen the original Wintergatan, and I'm saying it wrong because I expect it's Swedish, but he's this Swedish musician who made this incredible marble machine. And this is now going to give ads. I don't know how to. Sorry, not very interesting. Oh my gosh, I don't know how it works if you're showing videos on stream for people again. Yeah, so it's this incredible instrument that he runs manually, but essentially the marbles play the music. I'm guessing people, yeah, if you haven't seen it already, watch this video, and I won't play much more of it, but you can see how the marbles go through, and then they start playing musical instruments. Essentially, it's incredible. But this video is from like 4 years ago, which is and I must have decided to subscribe to him for some reason. But the interesting thing is he's now, I think, trying to remake the instrument essentially. Well, you can tell I'm not using an ad blocker, obviously. Not very okay. That he's as I understand it, he's sort of trying to make a new version of the instrument and improve it. And you know, I stumbled across this today. This is episode 146, so obviously he's been doing this for a long while. But what I was struck by was that he, like, as he was talking about, so in this video, he had done a test with 5,000 marbles, and 14 of those 5,000 had escaped the machine. So actually, if you watch the original video, there's lots and lots of marbles, you know, like, that are lost essentially, like in error. It's not supposed to happen, but you know, things drop out or fall on the floor. They're everywhere by the end. And I think that was like the first concept one. But now he's trying to sort of perfect it. And so yeah, out of 5,000 marbles, he had only 14 like dropped on the floor or went missing. But he's driven to like get up to sort of like 100% efficiency rate. And you might go like, what the hell does this have to do with game design? There's a point where he itemizes essentially, these are my 14 marbles that went missing. And as far as I can tell, here's my breakdown. Like 10 of the marbles dropped out at this point. 3 of the marbles, you know, were caused by this particular problem. And he essentially then goes, here's a list of 7 things which I believe will fix these problems that I've observed. And he goes through them, you know, very methodically. You know, and a lot of it is like trial and error, because, you know, one of them is he's having vibrations with the instrument. So he has to try different things to try and stop vibrations and work out where they might be coming from. You know, this is actually a very complex machine, essentially, that he's hand built. And there's some really interesting engineering kind of concepts about how to get gears fitting together, and I'm missing this, like tuning the gears, like there's an optimal distance for gears to be apart for their teeth to efficiently mesh. And I think the thing that made me want to talk about it is that there's a point where he basically, I think, describes one of the great things about what you should do in playtesting, which is he said the reason why he's got a lot more direction with the machine than he did maybe even a year ago was that he realized if he keeps changing so many different things with the instrument all at the same time, he'll never work out what's working and what's not, what's actually fixing the problems and what's not. And it was only at the point where he started to really break down and go like, okay, I'm only going to fix this 1 or 2 things because this is where I think is the problem, and then I'm going to analyze what effect that has. And this video is him then doing the next test, which is 10,000 marbles. Watch the video to see the result. Spoiler: it gets 100% efficiency. But yeah, it's that point that in playtesting, and it's the same thing I think about with scientific experiments. You know, we have this idea of variables. You know, you're trying to control different variables so that you're testing one particular thing. And especially in the middle point of design, you know, in early design, you know, games change you can change lots of aspects of a game very quickly because you don't quite know what it is, and it's much more, you know, efficient to do that. But when you're sort of in the middle point of design and you have a sort of solid core, but you'll have some problems with the game, it can sometimes be very tempting to throw a bunch of new mechanisms or change a lot of systems at the same time. But the problem then can be is you don't know which part of that change worked, what was affecting what. You're really trying to understand what's the underlying, you know, cause and effect. And so changing only one thing and then seeing what happens is the most sort of scientific way to work out, that cause and effect. So I thought it was just really brilliantly expressed here in a sort of completely different context. And for me, that's I think the most inspiring things for game design is come from like non-game design fields where people are talking about the process of design. It's the reason I love 99% Invisible, which is a design podcast about pretty much any design. And I thought it was and it's actually a very touching video actually, because I think it also sort of talks about even the kind of creative process about how do you stay focused over a really long period of time on a really difficult project that's quite solo. So I think I think it would I was actually genuinely really surprised, and it was really enjoyable, and I will now go back and try and watch more of his. And he's also very entertaining, and even just seeing building this thing is just kind of incredible. Seems we have a few Winter Garden fans in the in chat, probably watch more videos than I have, but yeah. Hey Rob, how are you going? Nice that you can make it. Nicola says got an interesting video about some books he's been reading about optimizing development process. Yeah, he did mention 1 or 2 books actually during this video. I'll have to check out what books. I do follow a few people who would be described as kind of not self-help, but there's this guy called Matt Diavella who I watch on YouTube, who's sort of like a minimalist, but he talks a lot about various books or things. I have sort of a passing interest in those, and I'm always of the opinion that it's not one size fits all, but maybe you find 1 or 2 things that are useful for you, and so so that's good. But yeah, so I would check it out. Winter Garden, Gatan, if anyone is of Winter Gatan. If anyone's of the right background who could tell me how to pronounce that properly. But yeah, highly recommend it. Yeah, just really interesting sort of parallel insight into design. So which was really cool. Alex, he's built a community around the making process and the way his products become the videos. Yeah. I wonder if his approach comes under perfection as the enemy of done category. Well, yeah, I mean, that is true. Yeah, it feels like in this video especially, it's getting to such a point, like I'm changing from 99.95% efficient to 100%. Does feel like, I mean, I haven't watched the kind of progression, so I don't know where you would sort of say, this is finished or not. And I guess it's true, isn't it? You at some point you change, if you become so, it becomes so important. It becomes so important making videos and content, and that sort of overtakes what you were doing originally, maybe. But it's interesting. But in the video, he did show like that he did have some goal, which was not, like finishing the instrument was one part of that overall goal. I think whether it was like concert, be able to have you use it in concerts or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, check it out. Really fun channel. And yeah, Manuel, after living in Sweden, I'm pretty sure the last part would sound like Gotan or Gotan. Okay, which means street. Okay, Winter Street. Yeah, great. No, thanks very much for that. Cool. So I guess onto the Gotan. All right. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know that I lived in Copenhagen for 6 months, but haven't really remembered much. And I know that Danish and Swedish pronunciation are one of these weird, the 2 countries that are very close to each other are like so different. Can be very deceiving, but anyway. Yeah, onto the main kind of bit. And I guess it's a bit of a new thing, because I guess I haven't showed any prototypes. So basically, it's one of these cases of, again, being really inspired by Game Maker's Toolkit, another great YouTube channel, and his videos. He's done a few videos now on the video game series Hitman. For those who don't know Hitman, it's a video game where you are essentially an assassin who is goes through different levels, and there are these huge kind of living levels with different characters who are who are programmed to move around, and in each level you have different targets you have to try and kill. You kind of like subdue other people and steal their clothes as a disguise, so you can get into different places. you have different weapons. It's, you know, you're trying to stay in stealth. And I didn't know anything about the games before I watched the YouTube videos. I don't play a lot of video games. I also don't have a PC. And this game for a long time was only on PC, although there is a Mac version now, which I've just recently started playing a little bit of. But as with a lot of his videos, I'm sort of inspired from the video game world. It's like, well, can you bring some of that experience into the tabletop world? Before I go on, Nicholas says there's a woodworking channel from Australia, Pask's Mates. The way in which he approaches failure so matter-of-factly and doesn't shy away from scrapping a lot of stuff. When something doesn't work out, I found very inspiring and reassuring. How sometimes need to fail to get better. It's neat to have in the background as well. Okay, all right, I will have a look at that. It was nice to support some other Australian content creators and things like that. But yeah, you hear that sort of like fail faster mentality, and that, yeah, sometimes you have to know that something doesn't work before you can keep going. Yeah, I'd say yes. I designed a solo card game based on stealth video games. Oh yes, no, that's true, Manuel. Yeah, I was thinking about that, and certainly like there have been other games of that. But I guess I initially was interested also, having designed now more of these kind of adventure book kind of style games and narrative games. Is like, can you take something from that and use it like that? And so with Dave Neal, who's the co-designer for this game, we've been working on a few other narrative games that will be released soon. You know, we were throwing around some ideas, and in the end, it was like, can we make kind of a cooperative game where you have multiple characters, so everyone's a different character and working together, so almost like a SWAT team or something like that, as opposed to Hitman, who's always like a lone assassin. But a similar idea where you have a level, you have NPC characters that move around that will react to different things you do, but having some of that kind of like time stories, unlock, adventure game kind of feel, where you go in a room and you see what you can interact with. Initially, you know, it was something, well, would you have a book that you can kind of look up and things like that? But kind of the really key part of Hitman that we wanted to try and capture was this idea of mastery, which you don't see in a lot of games, especially not in narrative games. Like, narrative games are very much one and done. But what was interesting, and what Game Maker's Toolkit talks a lot about, is this idea that you want to keep going back to the level to get better and better and learn about this world, learn about the different schedules that the people are walking on, learn about the different, like the new, to learn about, you know, how the world works. How can you use different items in different ways? Because that's the other thing. There's so many different, in the video game, there's so many different ways that you can carry out your task. It's a very open world kind of thing. So we were sort of like, we were quite excited about that. And what we've landed on kind of for the first prototype is, yeah, it's an analog digital game. I think what became very apparent, so first off, what we wanted to try and do was, well, could we do it in a completely non-digital way? And I probably have, this is me being, again, extremely well prepared. I probably have an original example of some of the cards. So Dave worked around trying to make some, so like a card-based system where you would sort of reveal a card at the end of every round. Like, there would kind of be time rounds, and you would do this, and I can like quickly we'll show it. Let's see. There, you know, talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, as soon as it's coming up, okay, we can look at that. Okay, that's me. How do I zoom in? View, zoom. 200. Okay. Oh gosh, that's a bit too much. It's very interesting for everybody. 100%. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, some people are, in chat. Yeah, exactly. The tricky thing is intriguing but tricky to plan out in a lot of bookkeeping and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. So, hey, Michael, no problem. We're talking about like the newest prototype that I'm working on with Dave Neal, sort of based on Hitman, the video game series. So yeah, you would have these kind of like cards, which would say, you know, different NPCs do particular things in reaction to different actions. You would have these different cards that would tell you about how do people move every round, and things like that. Is there a problem? Do you? I'm just designing a game. Okay, I'm not raising like the Antichrist or something, or at least I hope I'm not. I hope I missed that chapter in Game Design 101. You know, if you try and make a stealth board game, then you'll, you know, like destroy the world. Anyway, so this early thing, and I was also working on like a map which would have codes and different rooms, and on like the little NBC tiles, they would have shapes and move from, like, that would tell you, like, they'd follow the shape. So like if there was a triangle on a door and you had an NPC with a triangle next to that door, then on the next round they would move through the door, etc., like that. Yeah, the problem, as people have said in the chat, very importantly, was that, yeah, it's like a bookkeeping nightmare essentially, and it very quickly just becomes like work, and it also makes you feel immediately like, why isn't this a video game? So we sort of abandoned after the, you know, like first, I mean, it was really only 1 or 2 prototypes, and not even really a full scenario or anything, where you know, it just didn't work, and that. And over the weekend, well, in the last week, we sort of, and we had in our back of mind from the start of the process that maybe this should actually be an app plus analog kind of experience. As my, you're reading my mind, you know. I don't know whether the comment came up or whether I said it first, but yeah, exactly, having an app doing the heavy lifting, and you know, it has been used in, and I guess our initial reticence is we're a little bit worried that you know, it's not even just app assisted, because it's not like it's just holding all the information that you could look up in a book like we have in the adventure games. But no, this would really have to carry some element of all the information of what's going on, like including sort of tracking hidden information and things you're doing. Fast forward to this weekend, and we've said, okay, we're going to do the app, like to have a app plus digital thing. But of course, neither of us are digital designers. Coders or like app developers, but that should never stop you from trying to make a game. So what I was doing all this weekend, and I will try and quickly find the, is it here? Yeah, I can find it here. So the main coding language that I know is Python. Those who don't know it, it's a programming language, reasonably new. And is pretty well known for being easy to understand, or like one of the more easy to understand. It's definitely in scientific research, it's becoming like the most probably used kind of language and for people to learn. So yeah, I sort of dived in. So it's interesting. I may not actually have, I should learn how I should not just be sharing all my screen, but I probably also have the original. So Saturday, I'll try and make this sort of interesting from a narrative sense. What I started with was I wanted a solution that if you gave it to another playtester or to a publisher, that they could use themselves in an easy way. And what I was trying to do was to use Excel, actually, with lots of sort of macros and built-in functions, where you would be able to essentially, you know, like type in a player action, and then it would tell you if something was happening in the game. It would give you like a message, and then it would tell you how to update the state. The kind of the research, the little bit of research I did into this, which is also really interesting, because the interesting thing about Hitman is that it's simulating, you know, like a real environment or a real. So it's not just, you get results, things happen in Hitman that I am not sure if they were originally imagined, but the idea is that you sort of set up simple rules for this system and the elements in that system, and then they just, you know, when you put things together, they react how their rules are set up, even if you didn't specifically, you know, even if you didn't specifically describe that specific interaction, it arises from these rules. And then Nicholas say, "Hey, everyone's a critic. You know, don't worry, you can tell if out in order." And he gives us hints. But so you're trying to create this system, and what I boil it down to is that really what you're doing is you can think of the game as this sort of state. You can think of a lot of variables, say the location of the different characters, like the players and the NPCs. Maybe if the NPCs are alert or asleep or dead, where are items? even like certain room statuses, like is this room on fire? Is it full of gas? Is the door locked? You can think of all of these as just variables. Like, so for a room, it could have gas in it or not have gas in it, or it could be on fire or not on fire. And at any point in the game, you have like a single state, which is just choosing a value for all these variables, and then that collection of those values gives you this state. And each time you do something in the game, you're really just moving to a new state. So like if I'm in a particular state and then I just move my character to a different room, then I've just ticked over into a new state, and the only change is I've only changed one variable, which is like the location of my character. And the interesting thing there is you can have a lot of rules about, which are general rules. It's like if a character ever enters a room that has gas, then this happens, for example. And there's even more kind of complex things that you can make the kind of logic even more sort of simpler. You know, you can describe fewer states and fewer items, and then just describe connections between states, essentially how to move between them. And yeah, there's been some points about Twine and things. Yeah, like Twine is also a really useful digital tool for narrative games. And it probably can do this, I guess. I hadn't actually thought about Twine. But I kind of, so the first day on Saturday, tried to get it to work in Excel. Massive problem. The actual biggest problem is that you can't, well, at least I haven't. Excel gets into loops very, very often. So I'm very used to in programming, like for my day job in Python, like if I have a variable that I can essentially use the previous value for that variable, alter it, and then make that new result like overwrite what the variable was before. And this is quite important because in a state-based thing, you want to, if you have like a particular, say, character, you want to make what the next state of that character, you need to know, what happened to that character, but also what was already happening to that character. You need to combine those pieces of information. And when you try and do it in Excel, you have these problems of self-referral loops. It's like this cell depends on this cell, but that cell depends on this cell, and that cell depends on this cell. So it's like this chain where it keeps calculating around and around in a ring, and it just breaks. It was a really tough day, actually. But tough in a kind of like you don't get a lot done. But in another way, it's one of those really fun, for me, it's like a really fun puzzle. It's like a challenge. And it reminds me of the best things I loved about research, which was when you had a kind of a concept or idea or something you wanted to work on, and you really had to think quite hard in a very conceptual way about how do you even go about it. It's a reason, and it's the reason I like programming, that, often you have a problem that's very easy to express, but you have to think about like a strategy about how you're going to tackle that and how can you do that in simple coding way. So anyway, summary, first day, Saturday, Excel, massive failure. But near the end of Saturday, I realized, okay, just get something working, even if you won't be able to send it to publishers. And so I switched to Python because I know Python. This is going to show off how terrible a Python programmer I am. I am completely self-taught. And, I'm sure actually we have some very talented coders in the chat who are going to point out very quickly, like, this is just a terrible way to do it. But I, as I always say, get something to the table as quickly as possible. So essentially, I had this same idea of a state-based system. So I have this huge list of different, and I can probably, I don't know, do people find this a bit small? Probably. I can, I must be able to zoom in. Hold on. Oh yeah, that might be a bit better. Okay, hopefully people can see that a bit better. So you basically have this huge list of different variables. Like, so I have, say there's 2 players in the game, they have a location, we have all these NPCs, which, like, so for this variable, that's like the status of that NPC. Are they dead? Are they alert? Are they, inactive, whatever? And they have a location. And then you have like different items, which are going to have a location. And then you have the locations themselves, which would just be numbered in this case. So this is to go with like a floor plan, and our idea basically was to have something a little bit like the kind of storybook mechanism in like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, which is where you have each like open fold of a book is a map that you would be able to move around. So really quick setup. You would just basically put your NPCs on their starting positions. You would start somewhere, and then. So what the game needs to be able to do is basically take inputs from the player. So the idea would be on your turn, if you had an app, you'd basically say what you're doing on the app, so it knows what's happening. So it, if I start outside this mansion, the kind of the scenario is you need to eliminate a target who's kind of holed up in their office in this mansion, and you're in location, say 102. So you're outside the main gate, and there's a guard outside the main gate, and they're not going to let you in if you're not, if you're not disguised, if you're just yourself, they're not going to let you in. So the idea is that each player gets a certain number of actions each round, say 2, and then once those 2 actions are done, then the game state moves on in like 1 unit of time, and that's when all the NPCs would keep walking about on their sort of their pre-programmed routes. So once I have this state-based system, I do this thing where I load the scenario, and this is where I can load all the kind of starting values. So I'm saying like the player ones, both players start in location 102. The target starts in this location, etc. And I put some information of like the routes that the player, like the different NPCs will go around, So this basically means like the postman, if they're in 104, then they're going to go to 102. If they're in 102, they go to 101, and so on and so forth. And then I just started defining functions, which are essentially actions that a player can take. So you can move, you can strangle someone, you can incapacitate them, you can shoot, you can interact, which is sort of like a catch-all, to interact with objects essentially. And in all of these cases, they always take 2 arguments. You tell them what player is doing them, and then like where you're moving to, or who you're shooting, or what item you're trying to interact with. And then importantly, and like whether you want to take on a disguise. And then there's 2 other functions which are kind of important. One is a check function, which basically when you run it, checks the state, because we essentially have a state. We start with all these values equal to 0, except for these ones which I've set as a different thing to start with. So that's a single state. And every time I send a command, like move here, interact with this, I'm going to update the state. So maybe if I change my location, then the player 1 lock will change. But after every action, basically you need a way, in the actual app, it would be you would take an action and then maybe an alert would pop up, or something would automatically happen where, if you walk up to the guard, they're going to get annoyed with you, or they'll say you can't come through here because you're not dressed in the appropriate way. So you need some way to sort of trigger those automatic alarms. And with my of course there is a way to do this, but I just did it by having a specific function, which is this check function, which you run after every action. And then it will essentially check the state, and if anything special is happening, it will tell you. It'll send you a kind of a message essentially, which is telling you what happened. And then the final thing is the next round command, which is basically this like, okay, we've done our actions, and then it'll tell you how to update the board and make things move around. And I will show in a very second how it actually works. Manuel is saying the solution was to extract it as the world as a deck. Forms a line of 6 cards, which shows what you see. It scrolls automatically at the end. So yeah, this is Agent Deco. Have I got the name? No, sorry, I've forgotten the name. Agent Deco. Yeah, exactly. I'd really like to try it actually. There's like a print and play somewhere. I know it was published, but I haven't tried it, I'm afraid. Yeah. Oh, okay. Which is turned into Superhot and Black Chronicles. Okay. Yeah. No, I'll definitely check that. I'd seen some earlier things of the game. And how that all works in the end is, so yeah, you start in 102, and then I use this thing called Jupyter Notebook, which is a way of running Python programs in a browser. It just makes it a bit easier to see the results of things. So basically, first I load like the program, I initialize it, and this gives me the initial set of values for the state, essentially. It gives me all the values of the different variables. And then I load the scenario, and now it's changed some of the variables based on, like if player 1 location was 0 because you just initialized them all with zeros. But now because the scenario says that players 1 start in 102, it's updated that essentially. And then you're ready to go, and you can do whatever you want. So for example, I might say, let's say I walk up into 103. I want to check out the main gate, or maybe I think I can just walk straight in. So and say I'm character 1, I go 1 and 103, and I just run that. Okay, so it's registered that move, and if I updated the state now, this would be 103. But if I run this check function, it will say, and this should actually say like the guard is saying this, the guard is saying you're not allowed in here. So I've walked up to the, and it reads the state, and it shows that you're in the same location as the guard and you're not disguised. So that's a bit of a problem. He doesn't like that. So what to do? What to do? Well, there is a postman that starts in this corner of the map. And what we're going to do is I'm actually going to move back. So say I had 2 actions. I'm actually going to move back to 102. So there I am. And now I'll check again. And now it's okay. I'm no longer with the guard. So it's updated that. So that's nice. Okay, I've done my 2 actions. So now we're going to go to next round. And it's going to say, give me several different instructions for how to move. So this is trying to minimize the amount of stuff that the players have to do. It's just simply telling you how to move the people along. Alex asked, does the guard now recognize you? That's yeah. You're already gone for like getting here was all my Sunday essentially. But yeah, of course, like in the future to add more kind of like memory and things like that. That's definitely an idea. But so you move, you move the guards, and now the postman has moved to 102. He's in the same location as you. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to strangle. So obviously there would be some rules about, you can only take this action if someone's in the same, location as you. But if I strangle the postman, and I have to do that as player 1, hopefully that's going to tell me. Yeah. So this should also say like the postman is now knocked out and, flip their token to inactive or whatever, and place the postman disguise in this location. And now I can disguise myself. I'm player 1. I can disguise myself as the postman, and I'm now disguised as a postman. I should have checked after each of these actions. We're all okay. Nobody's been alerted. In the next step of updating this actually is to include the check automatically whenever you take an action. Hey, Eclectic Camel, how are you going? Welcome. We're talking about a new stealth-based digital/analog game that I'm working on with Dave Neal. We've just strangled a postman and are now disguised as a postman. So that would be the end of the turn, and we'd go to next round again. And now we're moving some more NPCs. But interesting enough, the postman is no longer moving around because we've knocked them out. So the program is at least working a little bit. And now I'm going to move back into 103. And so if you remember when I'd gone to 103 before, the guard had said you're not allowed to be here. But now, nothing, because the postman's allowed in the house and will let me through the gate. And in fact, I can now, I can walk from 103, say, into 106, and there shouldn't be any problems. And I've sort of, I do 106 and I'll do another check and we're fine. So this is the kind of thing where you would, you have these simple actions, and, it just gives you feedback when it needs it. And of course, in the app, because you would run these checks automatically, you would only get an alert when it has to happen. You don't have to actually ask, check. And it would also know when next rounds happen because you've taken 2 actions each, so the next round happens automatically. And the other thing that we sort of talked about that I'll change for the next version is the idea that you would be prompted essentially when it's your turn, you'll be prompted of which actions you can take, essentially. So what's available to you. You're not told about them. So you'd only be told about things you can do in your own location. But that means that it's essentially choosing from a kind of a list, hopefully not a very big list, but also that list can sometimes give you a hint as to what you can do. So a really great thing about Hitman that was sort of talked about in the Game Maker Toolkit videos is that also the really clever part of design is they hint into things that you could do if only you found something. So say you wander past a cannon, but you don't have any gunpowder. It will sort of something when you put like mouse over it, it will kind of be grayed out and it says requires gunpowder. And even if you haven't seen gunpowder, that immediately goes, okay, well, if I go and get gunpowder and come back here, then I can use this. And that starts making you think of things you can do in the world. And the same thing can happen here that, say you're in a room with a window, maybe it says, if you have the key for the window, you would be able to open it, or it at least allow you interact with it. You don't know what the result is. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. And the interesting thing is even these initial tests, I think one of the main things I was concerned about, and I'm always concerned about with these kind of app, digital analog games, is the app going to feel, is it going to feel like you're just playing, a digital game? Hey, Daryl, how you going? Welcome. Yeah, you don't want like a tabletop game to feel like it should just be a computer game. But the interesting thing here is that the moment you've changed it into multiple characters, it becomes a much more interesting puzzle about how do you coordinate with each other to achieve the task. So it becomes, you know, nicely in that sort of cooperative game genre. Like, how do we work? How do we program? You know, you should go here, I go here. Maybe I can get this item. But also with all that sort of nice sort of surprise and exploration that you get in narrative games. You know, like, oh, I can see like an interesting looking switch in that room. We'd love to have it in the art. And you'll go like, well, I don't know what that does, but I'm going to go over there and check what we're doing. Alex says, can you strangle the guard? So yeah, it would eventually, you know, have those different ways. You can shoot people. That's not really coded in. It's only coded in for the one person you actually have to shoot. Yeah, so the interesting thing with this is, yeah, there's all these interesting rules and options you want to put in the game. But yeah, currently, every time I want to do that, you need to add, you know, another 5 lines of code, essentially. You know, so this is, for example, I'm just trying to, yeah. So like, there's a way that you can play with the thermostat to make you know, a guard move out of a room. If a guard just is sitting in a room, you can change the thermostat, turn the temperature up, and then they'll go and check the thermostat, which basically means that you like, and the way you trace that through the code is you have, yeah, so you have T as target for this interact action, and if you're interacting with a heating control, it says you increase the thermostat in the building, and you have this you know, the variable of the room changes and becomes heat. It should be hot, I guess. And then you have in this check function, it goes if you look at where the target is and this guard is, and if their location has the value heat, then the target becomes hot. It said, you know, it gives you a bit of dialogue and says, you know, why is it so hot in here? And now that the target has changed its status, then that's read in the next round thing, because you look and see if the guard is hot, then it's going to follow its route when it's hot, essentially. Whereas if it's not hot, if it's 0, well, actually, guard 2 doesn't move at all until that happens. So that's why there's no, you know, no function. A normal thing looks like, you know, when gardener is 0, you know, it follows the route normal. You know, the postman moves around, but when you kill the postman, they change their status. They're not a 0 anymore. They're actually a -1. So, you know, it doesn't read them anymore. So that's kind of, you know, like, so you can see even for one of the, like, a very simple interaction that was like 5 lines of code in 3 different places. And this is me being a terrible coder, essentially. So I'm sure there's a much better way to do this. But the point is, at least I can do it. At least I can work on it. And we play tested it today. And yeah, it actually worked really well. And now it's kind of a fun thing that, you know, now it's like, well, what can we, and just, you know, as people are saying in the chat, like, oh, can you strangle the guard? Can you shoot this person? Can they remember you? And you can start sort of building in all of that logic based on like very simple changes in state and things like that. There's some like programming, you know, like, I mean, one of the tricky things is with programming, you very quickly, like, you realize, you know, you always start, you get about halfway in or whatever, and you realize, oh, I have to completely rewrite it in this other structure because it needs to have these properties. And so you go back and you keep looping back. And every time you go back, you get a better and better structure of what you're doing. There's already a few things I need to change with this, the way that you handle variables for a room. You should just have a list of variables, not a single variable, because obviously a room could have several variables at the same time. It could be both cold and on fire, or it could, you know, these sort of things. So if communicates and also an action, that could get really tight. Yeah, it's no, I think there's lots of options. And what we love is actually when you play, the hope is that is there going to be a physical element? Yeah, so the idea would be that this actually is 2. There's an upper floor and a lower floor in this sample scenario. It could be bigger. It would be in a book, much like you know, Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, or some of the you know, Ryan Lockhart's games, things like that. And you know, you would open it. You know, you put the book on the table, or Plaid Hat games. You know, like the pirate game, the recent pirate game, which I'm forgetting, or the Fable kind of stuffed Fables. So you put the thing on, you have some standees, which are the different NPCs that you would put on the map. You would also have cards in a deck that you could draw from that would represent items once you pick them up, but you wouldn't have to put them on the map to start with. Things would be illustrated on the map so that you could see where opportunities are if you look closely. And then you would have the app, which you'd be putting your actions. As you put the actions, you move around. You actually physically move the pawns. So you can strategize together because you can see the map. You can see where opportunities are. As the NPCs move around, you get to see what their routes are in physical space. When you find stuff, you draw the appropriate item card, and you can use that. And yeah, you could have a bunch of scenarios in a book, and the app plays. I mean, another and also kind of an easy way is if everyone has a phone, then you could have your character on your phone and what actions you've got, and you could be planning with each other, or you could run it through a central app. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are, I guess. Cold man on fire. Yeah, there's all these kind of funny sort of fuzzy logic sort of options, but yeah, it was. I haven't had a kind of a couple of days like that for a while on like early design where you get to the end and that it kind of work like that you have a result and it feels like, I mean, that's also why I really like coding, is that when you get, even when it's not finished, but when you get to something that actually works or even runs just for a bit, like so the fact that I was typing in commands and this wasn't completely crashing just feels incredibly satisfying because it's come after many hours of like doing a few things and then break, or this doesn't make any sense. I still, and when we played through, we found some issues like once you, if you there's a way that the postman stops walking or something, but then it doesn't like tell you, then it breaks the next round thing because it can't find anything for the postman to do. Which is a bit of a problem, but yeah, anyway, it was nice. Alex says, does the app element change who you would pitch this to? Yeah. So, I mean, it's a pretty specific, it's a pretty specific type of game. And yeah, it's in a way, I don't think it's actually necessarily a very complicated app. The fact that I'm able to do some amount of coding myself, you need some sort of obviously graphical interface. But it makes me, it's not, hopefully not that complicated, says the non-app developer here. But yeah, it's not everyone could do it because it fits into that suite of like you have to be able to update the app and you need a physical component. Obviously we would think of people like Lucky Duck Games do Chronicles of Crime, which is not completely dissimilar. Obviously there's a combined digital and physical element. I mean, what we like about this, maybe compared to that, is that really the physical element is something that you can share and communicate about. There is still a lot of talk around the table. It's not that everything is just happening through the app. The app, it's not just the information is coming about how people are moving around, and you're trying to watch that and see opportunities. So yeah, we're definitely thinking about that. There are some other publishers. If you could get the Hitman license, maybe that would be really cool because I think this actually could fit that very well. It's a little bit different in this multiplayer, and so you're not just A to zero, but that could also be an interesting thing. So yeah, we're definitely thinking about how we could pitch that. But it's interesting because I have seen a few discussions popping up on Twitter and Facebook about like what stage you pitch a game to. And for me, I have talked a little bit sometimes about pitching a game as early as possible can be very useful. And I think this is a perfect example of the style of game that you do want a publisher on it, kind of on board as early as possible. Not because our work is done. If we were to show a game in this rough state or even a little bit more than this state, we realize that there's a lot more work to be done on our part as well, designing scenarios, designing different interactions. But once you have a publisher on board, it starts setting some idea of boundaries about what can and can't be done that you have to think about in terms of product design. And also with narrative games, they take a lot of time to just come up with, every different narrative game has this different set of rules and restrictions, from components or the game length or what kind of, player interactions you want in the game. And if you go too far down that path, in some ways it's harder to, like you're pitching a more specific product. And if it doesn't match what the publishers want, you've essentially wasted a certain amount of time making it too specific. the earlier you show it, it's a little bit more malleable. And Josh does make the point, it's easy to pitch earlier if you're somewhat established. That is absolutely true. And yeah, it is something, and both Dave and I have experience in narrative games and delivering those, so that's why we can do something like this. And yeah, I definitely, it's definitely true that it's harder if you didn't have that kind of record, that track record. It would be a lot harder. It's harder to get somebody on board for that. But yeah, this is kind of one of the ways that we work now, because it is actually more efficient, because you kind of get to do all the work, the really nitty-gritty, the hard work, the developing with the publisher straight away. So we've got some names probably up in the Hitman Academy, Hit Boy, Strike Lad. Yeah, Smash Brothers. I think that one's been taken, unfortunately, but yeah. So we could see. Yeah, good point, Alex, about might fit in the Bilger Brothers universe. That's true, and I know Tim has a background in app development as well. So yeah, it's quite exciting, and it's a really cool part of the kind of game design process, and also just completely new to be making a digital prototype, actually, like just really raw digital prototype to be able to work in. And I think another thing might be looking into simple, because I was also looking into Python libraries that immediately let you have an app-like kind of graphical user interface. But there was a point which was screw it, I'm just going to do what is the easiest thing that I have something to be able to play and try out. I think I really reiterate the rule of just get at the table, try it out, play. Because even in playing this, that made us start thinking about, how do we want players to be using the app? Do we want the app to be prompting you as to what you can do? Because you don't want to have to be typing in commands and remember what they are. But then if you're prompting people, well, what are you prompting them? How specific are you? How can that sort of play into that? And thinking about that then is telling me, well, what's the next step in coding this? And that's going to be where, yeah, you're on your turn, you're presented with, here's this list of kind of very specific options. But of course, the mystery is you don't know what's going to happen when you take a particular option. And also the really nice thing with this digital thing is it's hopefully quite easier to breathe new life into an existing scenario. You could imagine with this scenario, you could just up the difficulty, in fact, make it a different challenge just by adding, say, 2 more guards that act in a new way. And suddenly you know some things about the scenario already, but you have to react to these new rules, and that can all be kind of, it could be contained within the app, essentially, more information in the app. Yeah, the minimal viable prototype, absolutely. Yeah, Hal, cryptid app prototypes just output text files for 6 months before we thought about interface. Yeah, that'd be really, yeah. I didn't. So you coded your own cryptid app? Because I seem to remember that. Did you have a more sort of analog paper version when you came to Cambridge? I didn't actually get to play it, but I can't quite remember. It would be interesting. Yeah, if you what was your experience? Did you start with a sort of a purely analog, looking up tables like we did, trying to make cards and things? What point did you go and really use the app, I guess? But yeah, I could see that would be a similar thing. And now I want to make a deduction game or something, now that I can, now that I am suddenly free to, I have a new kind of world in which to try things out. Yeah, but yeah, so that's been my weekend. And it was, yeah, it was really fun. And we're really kind of excited to see where it might be able to go. The funny thing is that this was also motivated by the fact that we want to finish this idea because we have another idea that we think is kind of much more interesting for another game. And this was we have to just not finish this. We just have to kind of get this idea out of the way so we can work on this other thing. But of course, this thing is worked out, has turned out quite well. But whatever gets you motivated to work on something is useful. Hal says Cryptid started as purely digital. So also for those who don't know, Cryptid, game by Hal, which is a sort of a deduction game, really, really great game, beautiful production from Osprey, and started as purely digital. The combinatorics unpractical by hand. Yeah, okay, I can understand that, I guess. You tried to get paper. Yeah, I mean, was there? Oh yes, because there is a. Is it? Does it both have an analog and a digital? Can you play with an app and not with an app? I can't remember with Cryptid. yeah, but yeah, really, really cool. Yeah, so fun times with design. Well, I guess I've been chatting on a bit. Is there any other sort of questions about that? Because I might wrap up soon, as it's been a bit of a manic kind of weekend and day. But yeah, I don't know whether I mean, if people are interested in going through kind of prototypes, it's always a bit tricky because you don't, I have to kind of check with co-designers whether they're okay with it, and obviously some things work a bit more on a digital way because I don't have any like cameras set up to do like physical things on my table. Who knows, if I invest into it a bit more. How I was saying, there's a bunch of look up tables in paper in the box. We thought had a cooler card-based system, but harder to produce. Okay, yeah, okay, so it's kind of a book and you look up the tables. So yeah. I love Hitman. Yeah, it's interesting actually. It's one of those funny things that you can be inspired by something. I was so inspired by the Game Maker's Toolkit video without having played it, and then it finally came out at Mac sometime, but I realized only reasonably recently, and bought the game, or Hitman 1, and started playing it. And I've only really played the first scenario, and I've killed both people I think once or twice. But it's sort of weird. It's funny that it inspired me so much, but I don't know if I actually really enjoy the game ultimately as a video game. Maybe I'm just not a video gamer that much. I find the kind of the real-time aspect and the kind of reacting and the controls and all that, just I'm not that interested. I'm interested in kind of the choices you make. And I think for me, when I think about narrative design, that's what I keep coming back to as the most interesting thing for me, is to just present. I mean, much like for other games, is present the players with an interesting choice. Don't make it hard for them to understand what the choice is, or make the kind of mechanism in which they make the choice difficult. Just present them with an interesting choice and then surprise them with what the consequences of that choice are. And so, and Hitman does have that. It has that kind of puzzle aspect, and you get to see the consequences of what you've done. But then I guess the repetition, I didn't quite get into the repetition as much. I should really try and give it another go. The other problem is that, I don't have a gaming laptop, and even though it does run, it again makes my laptop sound like it's about to explode or something like that. So it's something I would like to have a look at again. But we'll see. The other game that I would chat at, if anyone wants to check, that I saw on a Game Maker's Toolkit episode recently, which kind of looks like a Carcassonne version. Where is this game? Here. I'll bring it. There's this game called it is called Kato, and if you just look at this, it looks like you're playing Carcassonne. But as I understand it, it's sort of a puzzle game. But the cool thing is that you can move around the world, which is made of tiles, and make new paths and things. Which I'm tempted to give a try to actually. And it kind of looks beautiful, and I always take Game Maker's Toolkit's recommendations. So yeah, Kato, I'll check it out. Also I really want to play The Witness again. If people are interested, I definitely would play Witness on stream. But it's one of these tricky things that I don't want to ruin it. It's one of these amazing puzzle games that you kind of don't want to ruin for anybody else. So I'm not sure if streaming it makes really a lot of sense, but I played it quite a long time ago. I didn't quite finish it, and I've kind of been hankering to play it again. So maybe that's something will be a kind of a let's play different puzzle games or something. Could be fun. It's frustrating if you know what you should be doing but can't execute the strategy. Yeah, actually, I think for me that is the most frustrating part of Hitman ultimately, because when you see it in the video of Game Maker's Toolkit, you're like, oh, I can do this and this and this. It's just it's like the time. If you get it wrong, then it's like, oh, and of course you can save and then reload and kind of redo it. But it's just all that faff that I really don't enjoy. You kind of want to just try. You know what you're trying to do, and you know it's possible. And there are also sometimes some weird, kind of side exceptions, you're not standing in the right place so somebody doesn't recognize you, or you're trying to lead somebody on and you get out of their way. And, there's just this kind of there are these moments where, I suppose I like the kind of calm, methodical point. And sometimes it just evolves into this weird shooter. And I know you can kind of get out of that, but it makes me lose my thought about how, I love the emergency chaos of Hitman, but don't love it when I accidentally place my hammer on the floor instead of throwing it. Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's just an, again, it's an interface thing, and obviously that's not, there's no, it's not a thing against the game. It's just the game it is. But it would be kind of interesting to take the things I like about the game and make my own game inspired by that, and let players just really do the thing they want to do, and then kind of work that out. So we shall see. We shall see where all that goes. Yeah, but I think I might call it a day. So as always, if you want to get in touch with me at any time, I am at Wise Goldfish on Twitter. That's probably the best way to get in contact with me. I stream Mondays and Fridays at 4 p.m. GMT or 5 p.m. European time, Central European time. If you've got any ideas of what you'd like me to stream, or games that would be good to play or stream, or design aspects you want me to chat about, get in touch with me on Twitter or put it on Twitch. These videos are all going on YouTube as well, so if you kind of miss things from like more than 2 weeks ago, because Twitch like wipes everything from after 2 weeks, I'm putting them on the YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out and catch up on any of the previous streams. But yeah, thank you very much always for coming and joining me. It's it's fun to see this little community coming together, and nice to see you all on different streams and things, and catch up with you. So no, thanks very much. Makes it fun for me. Yeah, and yeah, I'll try and show as the project keeps going. I'll show what I can, and see how it goes. We could try and I always wonder about raiding people, but I never seem to find it's kind of a weird time to try and. I realized on Friday actually that Ruel is always Ruel's always quite soon after me. So I think on Friday we can crash Ruel's party, but Monday seems to be just us. But yeah, well, I'll leave it at that, and have a wonderful evening and wonderful week. Hope work's okay, or anything else. Hope everyone's well and safe. And yeah, I'll catch up with you on Friday, same time, same place. Cool. And thanks very much.